In the bustling heart of Lagos, where the city never truly sleeps, lived a young woman named Amina. She was the daughter of a once prominent businessman who had seen better days. Her father, Alhaji Ibrahim, was a man who had tasted success, but like many, had also faced the bitter flavor of decline. The family had once been among the elite, rubbing shoulders with the wealthiest and most powerful people in the city. But those days were long gone, and now they struggled to maintain the appearance of the grandeur they once possessed. Amina, though aware of her family's situation, had always harbored dreams of a simple, yet happy life. She wasn't concerned with wealth or status. What she longed for was love, companionship, and the joy that came from being with someone who truly cared for her. Amina had always been a dreamer, finding solace in the romantic novels she devoured and the tales of true love that her mother had told her as a child. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Alhaji Ibrahim, in a desperate bid to restore his family's standing, made a decision that would alter Amina's life forever. He arranged her marriage to Femi Oleyinka, a man whose name sent shivers down the spine of many. Femi was a powerful and wealthy tycoon, known across the city for his ruthless business acumen and cold demeanor. He was a man who had built his empire on the backs of others, caring little for the lives he destroyed in the process. To him, people were merely pawns in his game of power and wealth, and marriage was no different. It was just another transaction, another way to secure his position in society. Amina had never met Femi, but his reputation was enough to fill her with dread. She had heard stories of his exploits, of the way he crushed his opponents without a second thought, and of his lack of empathy and compassion. The thought of being married to such a man terrified her, but her father, blinded by his own ambitions, refused to see her fear. Amina, Alhaji Ibrahim had said, his voice stern and unyielding, "This marriage is not just about you. It is about our family. Femi Oleyinka is a powerful man, and with this union, we will regain our place in society. You will be his wife, and you will bring honor to our family." "But, Baba," Amina had pleaded, her eyes filled with tears, "I don't love him. I don't even know him. How can you ask me to marry a man I've never met?" "You will learn to love him," her father had replied, dismissing her concerns with a wave of his hand. "Love is not what sustains a marriage. Loyalty, duty, and respect are what matter. You are my daughter, and you will do as I say." Amina had felt her heart shatter at those words. She had always known that her father was a practical man, but she had never imagined that he would sacrifice her happiness for his own gain. She had no choice but to comply, for disobeying her father was unthinkable. In her family, tradition and honor were everything, and defying her father would bring shame upon them all. As the days passed and the wedding day grew closer, Amina found herself sinking deeper into despair. She was trapped in a situation she couldn't escape, forced to marry a man she didn't love, all for the sake of her family's honor. Her dreams of love and happiness seemed more distant than ever, replaced by the harsh reality of the life she was about to enter. But Amina's heart belonged to someone else. Someone who was the complete opposite of Femi Oleyinka in every way. His name was Ayo, a man who had captured Amina's heart with his kindness, his warmth, and his genuine love for her. Ayo was not a wealthy man. He came from a modest background and worked as a teacher in a local school. But what he lacked in wealth, he more than made up for in character. He was gentle, compassionate, and loved Amina with all his heart. Ayo had been Amina's confidant, her best friend, and her lover. They had spent countless hours together, sharing their hopes and dreams, imagining a future where they could be together. Amina had always believed that she would marry for love, and in her heart, she had always thought that Ayo would be the man she would spend her life with. But that dream was shattered the day her father announced her engagement to Femi. Ayo had been devastated by the news. He knew that his love for Amina was genuine, but he also knew that he couldn't compete with the wealth and power of Femi Oleyinka. He had tried to reason with Amina, to convince her to run away with him, to leave behind the life that was being forced upon her. But Amina, despite her deep love for Ayo, couldn't bring herself to defy her father. She knew the consequences of such an action, not just for her, but for her family as well. "Amina, please," Ao had pleaded, his voice filled with desperation. "We can leave this place. We can start a new life together, far away from here. I know I can't offer you the wealth that Femi can, but I can give you my love, my heart. Isn't that enough?" Amina had wanted nothing more than to say yes, to take O's hand and run away with him, to build a life together based on love and not obligation. But she couldn't. The weight of her family's expectations was too heavy, the fear of bringing shame upon them too great. "I wish I could, Ao," she had whispered, her voice choked with tears. "But I can't. My father, my family, they've given me no choice." Ao had looked at her, his heart breaking. He knew that Amina was trapped, that she was as much a victim of her circumstances as he was. But knowing that didn't make the pain any easier to bear. "I'll always love you, Amina," he had said, his voice trembling. "No matter what happens, know that I will always love you." And with those words, Ao had walked away, leaving Amina standing alone with the knowledge that her heart would forever belong to him. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur for Amina. She felt like a prisoner in her own life, trapped by obligations and expectations that she had no power to escape. Her heart ached for Ao, but she knew that running away with him would only bring shame to her family. She was torn between her love for Ao and her duty to her family, and it was a battle she was losing. The wedding day arrived, and with it, the weight of a future Amina had never wanted. The ceremony was a grand affair, attended by the city's elite, all eager to witness the union of two powerful families. Amina's father had spared no expense, determined to show the world that the Ibrahim family was still a force to be reckoned with. Amina stood in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She was dressed in a lavish white gown, her hair styled in an intricate updo, and her face adorned with makeup that highlighted her natural beauty. But despite the stunning image in the mirror, Amina felt nothing but emptiness. She felt like a doll, dressed up and put on display for others to admire, but with no control over her own life. Her mother entered the room, her face beaming with pride. "You look beautiful, Amina," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Today is a special day, a day you will remember for the rest of your life." Amina forced a smile, but inside, she felt like she was dying. "Yes, Mama," she replied softly, her voice devoid of emotion. Her mother's smile faltered for a moment, as if she sensed the turmoil in Amina's heart. But she quickly recovered, brushing it aside as pre-wedding nerves. "It's normal to feel nervous, my dear," she said reassuringly. "But once you see Femi waiting for you at the altar, all your fears will disappear. He is good man, and he will take care of you." Amina nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. All she could think about was Ao, the man she truly loved, and the life they could have had together. She wondered where he was, if he was thinking of her as she was thinking of him. The thought of never seeing him again was almost too much to bear. When it was time for the ceremony to begin, Amina was escorted to the grand hall where the wedding was to take place. The room was filled with guests, all dressed in their finest attire, their eyes fixed on the entrance where Amina would soon appear. The air was thick with anticipation, then Amina could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. As she walked down the aisle, her heart heavy with sorrow, she searched the crowd for Ao's face, hoping to see him one last time. But he was nowhere to be found. Amina knew that he had left, unable to bear the sight of her marrying another man. When she reached the altar, she forced herself to look at Femi. His expression was unreadable, his eyes cold and distant. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, exuding an air of confidence and authority. But to Amina, he was a stranger, a man she had no connection with, no feelings for. The priest began the ceremony, reciting the traditional vows that Amina had heard so many times before in the weddings of friends and family. But now, as she stood there, those words felt hollow, meaningless. They were just another reminder of the life she was being forced into, a life she didn't want. When the time came for Amina to say her vows, she hesitated. The words "I do" caught in her throat as if her heart was refusing to let her speak them. But she knew that she had no choice. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "You will learn to love him." But how could she love a man who was as cold and unfeeling as Femi? "I do," she whispered, barely able to speak the words. With those words, Amina sealed her fate. She was now Mrs. Femi Oleyinka, the wife of one of the most powerful men in the city. But as the guests cheered and the music played, all she could think about was Ayo and the life they could have had together. The first few weeks of marriage were a nightmare for Amina. Femi was a man of few words, and when he did speak, it was only to issue commands. He treated Amina not as a wife, but as an accessory, a trophy to display at business functions and social events. She felt like a bird in a gilded cage, trapped in a world of luxury that held no meaning for her. Femi's mansion was vast and opulent, filled with the finest furniture, art, and decor. But to Amina, it felt cold and empty, devoid of the warmth and love that she had always dreamed of. She spent her days wandering the halls, lost in thought, yearning for the simple life she had left behind. Despite the wealth and privilege that surrounded her, Amina's heart grew heavier with each passing day. She longed for Ayo, for the laughter and joy they had shared. She missed the way he made her feel cherished and loved for who she was, not for what she could provide. The loneliness was unbearable. Femi was always busy with his business, leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. Even when he was home, he was distant, more interested in his work than in his wife. Amina tried to reach out to him, to connect with him on a deeper level, but her efforts were met with indifference. One evening, as she sat alone in the drawing room, Amina found herself reflecting on the life she had left behind. She thought about her family, about how they had pressured her into this marriage, and about how they had failed to see the toll it was taking on her. She thought about Ayo, and how different her life would have been if she had chosen to be with him instead of obeying her father's wishes. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, she noticed a small drawer in the corner of the room that she had never opened before. Curious, she walked over and pulled it open. Inside, she found a stack of old letters, their edges yellowed with age. Most of them were business correspondence, but at the bottom of the pile, she found a letter addressed to her. Amina's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the handwriting. It was Ayo's. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter, her eyes scanning the familiar script. "Amina," the letter began, "I don't know if you will ever read this, but I need to tell you how I feel. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone in my life. I know that you are marrying Femi Oleyinka, and I know that I have no right to ask this of you, but if there is even the slightest chance that you still love me, please find a way to be with me. I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes." As Amina read the letter, tears filled her eyes. She could feel Ayo's love in every word, his desperation, his hope that somehow they could still be together. The realization that she had given up the one person who truly loved her for a life of misery hit her like a ton of bricks. But what could she do now? She was married to Femi, bound to him by law and tradition. She had made her bed and now she had to lie in it. But the thought of living the rest of her life in such despair was too much to bear. Amina's emotions were a whirlwind as she held the letter close to her chest. She couldn't help but think about how different her life could have been if she had only chosen love over duty. The mansion that had once seemed so grand now felt like a prison, and she, a prisoner of her own choices. As the days turned into weeks, Amina's inner turmoil grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. The love she had for Ayo still burned bright within her, and it only intensified the emptiness she felt in her marriage to Femi. But as the loneliness and despair weighed down on her, something else began to emerge within Amina, a fire, a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. The meek, submissive girl that Femi had married started to disappear, replaced by a woman who was determined to reclaim her life. Amina started to assert herself, subtly challenging Femi's authority. She refused to be treated as a mere possession, demanding that he show her the respect she deserved as his wife. At first, Femi was taken aback by this change in Amina. He had expected her to be docile and obedient, content with the luxurious life he provided. But now, he saw a fire in her that he hadn't noticed before. This new side of Amina intrigued Femi, and for the first time, he began to see her as more than just a trophy. But Femi was a man who valued control above all else, and Amina's newfound strength began to threaten his sense of power. His initial interest in her change soon turned to suspicion. He couldn't understand why she had suddenly become so defiant, and he began to watch her closely, searching for signs of infidelity or betrayal. Femi's paranoia grew, and he tightened his control over Amina, monitoring her every move. He questioned her about where she went and who she spoke to, his tone cold and demanding. Amina felt the walls closing in around her, the freedom she had fought so hard for slipping through her fingers. But Amina refused to back down. She had tasted the bitterness of a life without love, and she knew that she couldn't continue living like this. The letter from Ayo was a constant reminder of the love she had lost, and it fueled her determination to find a way out of the life she had been forced into. One night, unable to sleep, Amina found herself staring out the window, her mind racing. She knew that she had to do something, but she didn't know what. The fear of what Femi might do if he discovered her true feelings kept her paralyzed. But the thought of spending the rest of her life in this loveless marriage was unbearable. As the night wore on, Amina made a decision. She would reach out to Ayo one last time. She needed to see him, to tell him how she felt, even if it meant risking everything. She knew it was dangerous, that Femi's suspicions were already heightened, but she couldn't let that stop her. Amina wrote a letter to Ayo, pouring her heart out. She told him how much she loved him, how she had never stopped thinking about him, and how she wished that things could have been different. She told him that she needed to see him, to talk to him, to find out if there was still a chance for them. She arranged for the letter to be delivered in secret, taking every precaution to ensure that Femi wouldn't find out. Days passed, and Amina had nothing. She began to lose hope, believing that Ayo had moved on, that he no longer cared for her. But then, one evening, she received a reply. Ayo wanted to meet her, in a secluded park where they had often gone during their courtship. Amina's heart raced as she read the letter. She knew that this meeting could be dangerous, but she didn't care. She needed to see Ayo, to hear his voice, to feel his arms around her one more time. When the day of the meeting arrived, Amina was a bundle of nerves. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple outfit that wouldn't attract attention. She told Femi that she was going out for a walk, and for once he didn't question her. Perhaps he sensed that something was wrong, or maybe he simply didn't care anymore. As Amina walked to the park, her mind was filled with a whirlwind of emotions. She was excited, nervous, and terrified all at once. But above all, she was determined. She had to know if there was still a chance for her and Ayo, if there was still a way to escape the life she had been forced into. When she arrived at the park, Ayo was already there, waiting for her. As soon as he saw her, he rushed to her side, pulling her into a tight embrace. For a moment, they just stood there, holding each other, as if nothing else in the world mattered. Ayo, Amina whispered, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this. I know, Ayo replied, his voice filled with pain. But what can we do now? You're married to him. We can't just run away, can we? Amina pulled back slightly, looking up at Ayo with a fierce determination. Why not? Why can't we? I can't live like this anymore, Ayo. I'm suffocating. I need to be with you. Ayo hesitated, his eyes filled with uncertainty. But what about your family? What about Femi? He won't let you go that easily. I don't care. Amina exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. I love you, Ayo. I've always loved you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be with you. Ayo looked at Amina, seeing the desperation in her eyes. He knew that she meant every word, that she was ready to risk everything for him. But he also knew the dangers they faced, the powerful forces that would stand against them. As they stood there, lost in each other's gaze, neither of them noticed the figure watching them from a distance. Femi had followed Amina, his suspicions confirmed. His heart burned with rage as he watched his wife embrace another man, as he listened to her declare her love for him. Femi waited until Amina and Ayo had left the park before making his move. He would confront her later, in the privacy of their home, where there would be no one to witness what he had to do. When Amina returned to the mansion, she found Femi waiting for her, his expression dark and unreadable. Her heart sank as she realized that he knew that her secret meeting with Ayo had been discovered. So, this is how you repay me? Femi's voice was cold and hard, filled with barely restrained fury. After everything I've done for you, this is how you show your gratitude. Amina's heart pounded in her chest as she faced her husband. She knew that there was no point in denying it. Femi had already made up his mind. Femi, Amina began, but Femi cut her off, his voice rising in anger. Save it, he shouted, his eyes blazing with fury. I gave you everything, Amina. I took you in, gave you a life of luxury, and this is how you repay me. By sneaking around behind my back with another man. Amina flinched at his words but didn't back down. For the first time, she felt a sense of clarity, a sense of resolve. She had nothing left to lose. I never wanted this life, Femi, Amina said, her voice steady. I never wanted to marry you. I did it because I had no choice, because my family gave me no choice. But my heart has always belonged to Ayo, and nothing you say or do will change that. Femi stared at Amina, his expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. He had always been in control, always had the upper hand. But now, he was faced with a woman who was no longer afraid of him, a woman who was willing to risk everything for the man she loved. You think you can just walk away from me? Femi's voice was low and dangerous. You think I'll let you go that easily? You're mine, Amina. You belong to me, and I won't let you go without a fight. Amina met Femi's gaze, her eyes filled with determination. I don't belong to anyone, Femi. I'm not your possession. I'm a person, with my own thoughts, my own feelings. And I refuse to live my life as a prisoner. Femi's face twisted with rage as he stepped closer to Amina, his hands clenched into fists. But before he could say anything, Amina continued. I'm leaving, Femi. I'm leaving, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. If you try to come after me, I'll make sure the whole world knows what kind of man you really are. For a moment, Femi stood there, stunned by Amina's defiance. He had never seen her like this before, had never imagined that she was capable of standing up to him. But as the reality of the situation sank in, he realized that he had no choice. Amina was no longer his to control. Fine, Femi spat, his voice dripping with venom. Go. But don't think for a second that you'll be happy with him. You'll see, Amina. You'll see that life with me was the best thing you could have ever had. With those words, Femi turned and walked away, leaving Amina standing alone in the grand hall of the mansion. She watched him go, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and relief. She had done it. She had stood up to Femi and taken control of her life. But as the reality of what she had done began to sink in, Amina felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. What would happen now? Where would she go? And what would become of her and Ayo? Stay tuned and watch our next episode.